This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's community access radio station Plains FM 96.9 and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
Good morning, Bliss lovers. It is Rebecca here, intuition coach and mentor and founder of the Intuitive Life Academy. Welcome to the Find Your Bliss show here on Plains FM, where we talk about all things psychic, metaphysical, esoteric and intuitive. So today we are talking about what to do if you have somebody in your life that is driving you cray-cray. Now, this is a fun topic to talk to. I know a lot of people might be like, oh yeah, thinking about somebody or some situation in your life where you're experiencing conflict. But I can tell you right now, if you're prepared to adjust your camera angle and look at conflict in a different way, it is an amazing opportunity to learn something about yourself and to grow. So I've got 3 steps that I would like to recommend in regards to implementing. If you've got a situation in your life where you're experiencing conflict, it might be ongoing conflict, it might be simmering conflict, it might be something that's escalated into an argument, it might be kind of a dissonance that you have with another person in your life. So I'm going to share with you some information and these steps in regards to most of it comes back down to tweaking your perspective. So there's 3 steps and they're really about checking. The first one is to check your ego. So let's unpack that a little bit. Checking your ego, what does that even mean? Now, your ego, this is what really separates us from other animals on Earth and why humans are considered, I guess, king of the kingdom, is because we have an ego, which means that we can, we identify that there's difference between me and you, but also too, and our ego is really there to protect us, to keep us safe. It's kind of like goes back to those primal energies of, if there's someone else in my reality, is this person safe? Can I be friends with them? Are they a threat? Are they going to kill me? Are they going to eat me on a primal level, right? So when we have this energy of checking your ego in regards to conflict or a situation where somebody's driving you crazy, what we want to be doing is going, where am I responding to this situation from my ego? So your ego is always the part of you that goes into separation. It's trying to protect you, it's endeavoring to look after you, but it's also doing it from a lower level of awareness. So your ego will be the part of you that goes into blame, it goes into judgment, it goes into making the other person wrong. Now, and everybody knows what this feels like. You can feel it in your body. When you go into ego, what happens is your energy goes into your head and you lose connection with your heart space and your ego starts saying stuff like, I can't believe they did that, or, you can see even from my body movement, if you're watching on Facebook, it's, you can go into that kind of sassy, egotistical reaction if somebody is having a conflict, because, of course, on some level, we want to preserve ourselves at all costs. So if we feel threatened, which is what happens when we're in a conflict, it's very easy to go into ego and to start to want to defend ourselves. And we often do that by endeavoring to create this separation, like, I am not like you. You are attacking me. You are wrong, which again is something that I've talked about before, like right and wrong, good and bad, light and dark. When we endeavor to reinforce duality, which is that, right and wrong, polar opposites, we're kind of missing the point. We're all connected. This is the law of one mind, of oneness, that we're all connected. So when we're choosing our ego, which is often known as edging God out, we are reinforcing the belief that we're separate. I'm not the same as you. You're different from me. You you're wrong and I'm right. You know, I've heard Deepak Chopra say that before. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And I guess, you know, that's what the Find Your Bliss show is all about, is choosing your own happiness. So starting to realize one of the first things you want to be doing if you're in a conflict with somebody is take responsibility and check your own ego. And what you want to do is just do this with some loving compassion. You want to observe yourself. You want to go, oh, what language am I using in response to this person? You know, it might sound like complete blame. It might sound like disdain. It might sound like confusion. But you want to check your ego and go, okay, what language am I using? Am I going into blame? Am I going into defensiveness? Your body is going to tell you what is occurring. You will feel it in your body. You will feel the energy of defensiveness. And this can often be one of the hardest things for people to understand and comprehend, is that no matter what is occurring, you have a choice in regards to how you respond. So depending on the circumstance, if it's an ongoing conflict, you're going to have some time to observe, think about it, reflect on it. If you're in the moment, there's a couple of things that I would recommend. Focus on your breath, right? Being in that space of like, you know, ask for what it is that you want. If you're in a conflict with somebody and you're just feeling overwhelmed, so this is kind of like acute versus chronic. If you're in a circumstance where it's going at you and you're feeling overwhelmed, what you want to be doing is focusing on your breath and realizing again that you have a choice. If somebody's attacking you, what you want to be doing is to actually just say, you know what, I need a minute. And remove yourself, especially if you are, you know, I work with a lot of intuitives and sensitives, so it can be very overwhelming when somebody's energy is being hostile, angry, dominant, and it's coming towards you. Recognize that you have a choice, and often people forget this because they, you know, if we're being attacked, they go into a weakened state and they kind of, their energy gets scrambled and then they forget that they even have a choice, right? So that's why the breath is so important, to keep on breathing. I think a really important thing to do is if somebody is attacking you in an acute situation, is to remember to stay calm at all costs. And it's not easy, right? That takes practice. But to be aware of these things before you even get into a conflict can actually really help when it does occur. So even being in that circumstance where you expand light out from around your body, just using your imagination to go, okay, this is my energy field and I'm going to fill it up with light. And even though that person is saying words and directing energy towards me that does not feel good, I have a choice in terms of whether I actually take it into my energy field. Okay, and again, checking your own ego in the moment. Right? Do you want to continue on to have a conflict? By all means, go into your ego, get defensive, go into blame, start attacking them back. That will just escalate the situation. Or do you want to realize that you have a choice and hear what is being said, but also too, you don't have to take it into your energy field. You can actually listen to it and then just be with that. And say to that person, you know, I'm going to take away what you've said and reconsider it. Or I don't feel like this conversation is actually getting us to where we need to go. Perhaps when you've calmed down, we can have a conversation about it. So I'm talking specifically about conflict, right? When you have somebody in front of you, they're right up in your grill, they're angry with you, they're upset. You know, it's a very difficult situation to deal with. But this is also, and again, this will lead into some of the other points, but this is also a wonderful place to learn a lot of things. First and foremost, courage. Right? Courage to be on the receiving end of that kind of behaviour. Strength to actually hold space perhaps for somebody's feelings and not go into retaliation. You know, that takes a certain level of awareness to be able to do that. The next step, of course, is to be in that space of checking your own boundaries. So that's step 2 that I'm going to talk about. But yeah, depending on the circumstance, whether it's acute or whether it's chronic over a longer period of time, if you're in an acute situation, remember that you have a choice. You have a choice in regards to how you respond. Focus on your breath. Remember that you can always choose to step away if it gets overwhelming, and ask for time and say, you know, can we swing back to this when we are both calmer? Remember that the tone of your voice is incredibly powerful. If somebody's yelling and screaming at you and they've kind of lost control, You want to stay calm no matter what, right? That's your focus. Then your tone of your voice, like if you're starting to go into a bit of a screech, it's going to escalate. Keep your voice and your tone as neutral as possible. My dad, bless him, he said that to me. He said, if you keep your tone even, then people will hear you. And I'm sure a lot of people agree if you're in, a partnership, if a woman's kind of screeching at a guy, he won't hear you, right? You have to keep your tone kind of neutral. So, and of course, I know it's not easy because often if we do get angry or triggered in a situation, it's easy to go into anger. It's easy to get escalated. It's easy to be furious. But this is the beautiful thing about this situation is that is showing you something, right? If you're getting escalated into anger really quickly, there's something within you that's looking to be addressed, that's looking to be healed. And this is why conflict can be so amazing because it can be like, oh, wow, I just lost control, right? What do I need to do? What needs to be addressed or looked at within me? Because this is what happens in an argument. We get triggered dramatically by the other person. And that's where we want to take a step back, maybe after the circumstance has occurred, and do the work of looking inside of ourselves and going, where is this dissonance coming from? Why was it so possible for that person to push my button so easily? What is here within me that needs to be addressed? Because again, essentially you can only you only respond to the level of toxicity in the circumstance that is within you. And also too, it's showing you something. It's a reflection. And this is a wonderful opportunity to do some inner work and actually go, yippee, thank you so much for showing me that I have this conflicted energy within me. And what do I need to do in terms of going inside and looking at it, addressing it and healing it? This is why I often talk about if people have road rage when they're driving in their cars, it's never about the road rage, right? That is unprocessed anger that's looking to be addressed. It's about something else. You might swear black and blue at that moment that it's about the person in front of you, but often it's out of context, right? Somebody cuts in front of you in traffic and you're losing it. That is unprocessed anger that's looking to be addressed. It's looking to be seen. It's looking to be witnessed. And I know I'm talking about this like it's really easy and it's a piece of pie because I do it all the time with my clients, right? So I appreciate if you're listening to this, you might think, oh my goodness, you want me to go and look at my anger? The answer to that is yes. It will help set you free. You'll gain greater understanding. And of course, what will happen if you have a conflicting situation in the future, what will happen is you'll be free of the trigger. So it's not going to occur the same way. So first instance, right, check your ego. Don't go into blame, judgment, accusation. You will feel it in your body. It will feel contracted. It will feel like you're in resistance and it will feel pretty funky. Great way to zap your own energy and vibration is by going into that resistance and going into your ego. So let's talk a little bit about that, ego versus spirit, because obviously what's the alternative? If you're not going into ego, I guess ego would go into blame, whereas spirit would just stay neutral. Ego would go into judgment, where spirit would just be the observer. Ego would go into making the other person wrong, whereas spirit, again, would just stay neutral. It would be aware, but not put an opinion or an agenda on it. So I want you to think about this, folks. If you've got somebody in your life right now and you're making them wrong, which is, reinforcing that you're right, we want to do the work of kind of peeling back the layers and going, why is this so important to me? Why do I feel so threatened by this situation? And of course, this comes back to the majority of the work that I do with clients, which is looking at your imprinting and your wounding from the past. And it's not easy work, but if you want to transcend conflict, you'll look to do it, not just in your relationships, but within yourself. To go to that circumstance within you and ask those questions, like, where is this wounding coming from that I'm responding that way? Who's it connected to? Where do I feel the emotion in my body? What is this telling me? To even ask, is it mine, right? To be, because we can carry energy for people in our family all the time, right? So what does it take to be the person who's starting to ask those questions? So in the first circumstance, if you've got a conflict, if somebody in your life's driving you crazy, take responsibility and check your own ego. Because also too, if you're going into trying to change or control the other person, it's not going to work. You have no control over how somebody else behaves. So rule 101, focus on what you can change, which is yourself. You have no dominion and you really have no business determining how somebody else behaves, right? That's on them. You can, and also we do this a lot with people that we're close to. We have expectations in regards to how people should show up, and it can be very disconcerting if people around you have different values from you. You can find that difficult to assimilate. You can find it difficult to understand why they think the way that they do because they have a different value proposition. And this is often what happens too in conflict. You're coming from your own set of values, the other person's coming from theirs, and it rubs, which is why we have most success in our relationships with people who have similar values. So folks, that's good dating advice too. Find somebody who has similar values to you. What do they value in their life? Do they value honesty, connection, compassion? You want to get your values lined up. That's a good recipe for a successful relationship. So, and again, you can see if somebody has different values, does that mean that they are wrong? No, it just means that they just have a different value proposition. You might think in your mind that it's wrong, but again, that's your opinion. And is it actually helping you to solve the problem? No. So check your ego. What does it take to go back into that neutrality that soul and spirit provides, which is oneness energy, which is choosing to love people, which is choosing to love people beyond their value system, beyond how they're showing up, beyond your own expectations of them. So first step, check your ego. And your ego is going to be the part of you that's telling you a story about what is happening. I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they said that. I can't believe they behaved that way, right? We want to go, okay, I'm coming from ego. I can feel it in my body. It's creating judgment. It's creating separation. It's making it more difficult for me to be open-hearted to these people or that person or the situation or my boss or whoever you've had the conflict with. So I need to check my ego. I need to check my filter of reality. The second step that I recommend that you do is to, so check your ego. What was the next one? Check your boundaries, right? I mentioned that before. Check your boundaries. And again, this comes back to doing the inner work of healing. I can't tell you how many times I have seen people who get their boundaries trampled, and it makes them furious, and they just think that that's the way life is. And this takes courage to do, again, the inner work of going, okay, where do I have a sloppy boundary? If you want to be happy, not necessarily right, but happy, you will work on your boundaries. And I want you to think about it. And ask yourself some questions. I posted this earlier this week in my Facebook group, which is doing a little pop-tit quiz on people pleasing. Do you find it easy to say no to other people? And if you do say no, do you end up feeling guilty? Or do you find it hard to make time for yourself, especially if you're a mom, right? If you're married, if you've got kids, if you've got a job? Often what happens is everybody else's needs become more important than your own, and you can end up at the bottom of your own to-do list, and you can end up over time feeling really resentful because you're not making yourself a priority. Or if you do make yourself a priority, you can end up feeling guilty because it's unnatural. It's not a normal behavior for you. You're basically dropping your value proposition to the bottom of your to-do list. And sometimes we never get to the bottom of our to-do list, right? So that means that your needs aren't being taken care of. And the only person who can really do that is you. Nobody else can come into your life and say, okay, I'm going to interrupt how you're doing your life and make you a priority. It doesn't work like that. We need to do that. And we need to start looking at our boundaries. If somebody asks us to do something, are we always saying yes when we actually want to say no? You want to start asking yourself these questions, because often a lot of time people don't even realize that they're doing it, and then they just wonder why they feel resentful, angry, frustrated. It's really funny. most of my clients, because this is a big issue for women, right? Because it's not really socially acceptable for women to get angry. It's deemed as ugly, just like we have the other social construct where it's not okay for men to cry because we believe it's a sign of weakness, because we have, as a society, expectations in regards to how we're supposed to behave as men and women. So for a woman to get angry, it's deemed as ugly, and that's how it's kind of controlled, because of course we live in a society where there's so much focus on beauty and luxury and looking good and extravagance, etc. And if you don't fit that mold, then you are deemed to be on the outside. So that's why it's taken so long for even the Me Too movement to come to pass, because it hasn't been socially acceptable. There's been this energy, this undercurrent, all these emotions of anger. But what happens often with clients is they often say to me, I feel frustrated. Which is always amusing to me, because there's a big difference between feeling frustrated and feeling angry. But 9 times out of 10, people will say that they feel frustrated rather than feeling angry, because it's more socially acceptable. So we have all these people, right, walking around, and they've got these big, unblown volcanoes which are ready to pop within them because they haven't been able to create good boundaries, and they've got this anger, this unprocessed anger, which of course comes out like the road rage. So of course, if you're not getting your needs met, you're devaluing yourself by not placing yourself higher up that to-do list. You're going to end up like simmering with rage, and of course that can show up in conflict. And again, an example is you're living your life, and then once again your partner drops the towels on the floor in the bathroom, and you just lose it because you feel disrespected, because you haven't put yourself at the top of your to-do list, because you haven't set a boundary, because you have just been a people pleaser, and to avoid conflict, which often people think is a way to receive love, right? If there's no conflict, then that means everything's okay, when it's often not. And they will do that. They'll do that to avoid conflict at all costs. Because conflict can be really scary, like it does crazy stuff to your central nervous system. It can be physically threatening. Our hearts can start beating faster. We can lose our breath. Some people, if they've got a lot of unprocessed emotion, can go into a panic attack. It can be a really threatening situation for you physically, let alone emotionally or energetically. Especially if we don't have a good boundary, because you think about it, it's not just your physical body, it's your emotional field as well. Like words can land like knives in your emotional field and also in your energetic field. And this is where with the work that I do, like one of the first things I'll often do with a client is look to see if they've been heartbroken. I can't tell you the number of times that I have psychically had to pull knives out of people's energy field because they have been attacked by somebody else. And they've got all this kind of metal and debris kind of wandering around, especially in the chest area, because that's often where words land, which is interesting because that is our heart space. And of course, as a defense mechanism, we often create a heart wall, which is to go, this is too painful, so I'm going to block that. But of course, when we do that, it makes it hard for the love to come out and for the love to come in, even though in one level it's like it's okay because I'm safe. So I'm not being attacked, or I've got this defense mechanism that's going to help me. It's going to protect me. So again, we want to check our ego and make sure we're not going into that language, that resistance. We want to endeavour to be aware, observe our own behaviour, see and look at our own wounding in terms of conflict that is showing up for us. When you do that, it literally moves out of your energy field. Once upon a time in my own life, I was well versed in having arguments, and I don't experience that much conflict anymore, not directly. In terms of having people, yell, scream, etc. in my presence, because I've done the inner work at looking at my own dissonance. And, it's not the easiest, but it's one of the most rewarding things to do, is to look into the deepest, darkest places inside of yourself, the parts that you might consider ugly, and actually love them. That is what we would call shadow work, being brave enough to actually go in and do that. And that is what sets you free. And that's how you shift where you're experiencing conflict in your life and world, because you're releasing the energy of the pattern that shows up. So if you are a person who feels like you've been attacked a lot, or if you're a person who feels really angry, just know that there is hope. You can shift the energy, and you can do it really quickly once you know what the root cause is. You know, if somebody comes up into your life and world and you get triggered by them, you can guarantee 100% that it's going to be connected to an energy from where you felt wounded from the past. And if you go to the root cause and clear that energy, then it's just not in your energy field anymore. And that's literally how you can transcend conflict. And the beautiful gift of all of this, if you're looking at it from the bigger perspective, is spiritual growth. Right? This is how we grow and evolve as humans. All suffering comes from too limited a perspective. When we expand it and see which is when we have those aha moments and we just like, oh my goodness, I see things from a completely different perspective. That's what it's all about. So checking your boundaries, asking yourself, is it easy for you to say no? Can you make yourself a priority? Have you done something in the last 2 weeks that has brought you joy? You know, have you given yourself time to do something that you really love to do, that lights you up, that makes you feel good? Do you find it easy to do that? If people ask you to do stuff, are you just the yes girl? So this weekend especially too, I'm doing a call on transcending people pleasing. So it's actually on Crowdcast, which is www.crowdcast.io/transcending-people. So we'll have a picture of me on the next to a chair, the Intuitive Life Academy. But this is really all about releasing the anger that you may have, the resentment that you have. Because often what happens with people pleasing is people end up realizing they're kind of having an expectation of how other people should behave. Like, if I do this, then this person will be happy, or I don't want to disappoint them, right? Bringing it back to yourself. What eventually happens with the anger and resentment is people get angry with themselves, because they realize that they're doing it to themselves. And it's life is kind of showing them by kind of impinging on their boundaries, this isn't working for you. You need to develop a different skill set so you can create more space in your energetic field. Like if your boundary's like right here, it's going to feel cramped. You want to expand it out so you have more space, and you're filling that space in your reality up with the light of you. It always feels good to expand, right? We want to be bright, shiny, expanded beings. So just kind of checking yourself on that, checking your ego, and then checking your boundaries. And if your boundaries are wobbly, and I tell you what, I know very few people who have stellar boundaries. I definitely know some, but most people struggle with their boundaries. And your boundary is really the interface between your reality, the bubble of your reality, and somebody else's. And even kind of asking yourself on an energetic level, is my interaction, my boundary with other people smooth? Which means essentially that if somebody, and strong, because if somebody attacks you, what you can do immediately is kind of go, okay, is that about me? Checking inside myself, I'm going to see if there's any energy on it. If it's not, I'm not going to pick it up. It doesn't come into my field of reality. I've done the work of taking responsibility, of checking inside myself to see what I'm responsible for. And if it's not my energy, and if it's not about me, and it's not my wounding, then it's not mine. Right? And you have that awareness so you can have a strong boundary, so you don't have to walk around feeling triggered or hooked or contracted because of this conflict. You can be in a space where you're like, I love you, I bless you, but you need to take responsibility for your stuff. Also known as projection in psychiatric terms, right? If somebody's projecting their pain and their woundedness onto you, on some level, what they're really asking for is your help to help them heal it, right? That's probably a very high view in terms of being able to resolve it. But, realize that they're looking to you in a way to help you heal their pain. Anyone that you're in conflict with, right, they are part of your spiritual growth. So there's only one thing you take away from this podcast today, that it's that. Realize that you are actually helping each other to grow. You've probably made a soul contract before you even got here to do that. So recognizing that from a different perspective, this person is in my life, and even though there's conflict there, they're actually helping me to grow. They're helping me to be the person who has authority. They're helping me to step into my boundaries. They're helping me to transcend being a people pleaser. They're helping me to learn how to love myself if I take the cue. Like if you're stuck in your ego and you're just in retaliation and you're going into the resistance, your life's going to feel awful, right? They say that the anger is the punishment, right? When you're in the energy of anger, that is the punishment. You want to learn what it takes to collapse that paradigm. Like get the awareness, feel the feeling, collapse the paradigm, let it go, and go back to what you really want, which is to be happy. So recognize again, if you have somebody in your life and world, if you can even look at it from that perspective, how is this person actually contributing to my spiritual growth? What is it that I'm learning from this situation? It's a really great way. But also too, where are my boundaries at in relationship to this? Are they strong? Do I not have any? And often too, right, this is what can happen, is other events from our past, like if you've experienced past trauma or some kind of abuse, your boundaries probably need even more work. So that's why it can even be more disturbing if you if you have a fragile boundary system, somebody comes along, and often what will happen is this is very clear in the bully-victim dynamic. Like the bully will kind of automatically, unconsciously sense that the victim has a more fragile boundary system, and they will come along and smash it because they can feel that it's not strong, right? So it's almost like those two dynamics get drawn to each other. I've seen some really interesting things with that too, like where the victim then ends up being the bully because they get so angry and inflamed that it flips. But what we want to do, right, is do it from a place of awareness and kind of go, you don't want to end up being the perpetrator. You want to end up being the person who's gotten the awareness, done the inner work, cleared the energy, and recognizes it. And I can appreciate, folks, this isn't something that you do on a Sunday afternoon in 20 minutes, right? This is something that we have to show up and practice and be aware of. But when you've got the tools, you can shift it all in such a dramatic way. Okay, so the last thing as well, we're checking our ego, we're checking our boundaries and how strong they are. And if you don't have strong boundaries too, you're probably going to be experiencing some kind of anger. What's really fascinating, I just want to speak to this a little bit. What I see a lot with women in anger is they don't even know they're angry. Right, I remember having a client once and I said to her, when was the last time you got angry? And I think she said something like, when I was 12. And I was like, oh, do you know what I mean? Like anger usually presents itself when your boundary has been crossed. But what happens, right, is people pleasers often ignore that. Instead of speaking up and saying, hey, again, remembering the creed, which is do no harm, but take no crap, right? You want to be in that sweet spot of going, oh, my boundary's been crossed. I need to stand up and say something. I remember having this experience. It was very visceral, like I was feeling it in my body really intensely. Like I'd said yes to something, and then my body was like, no. Like, we don't want to do that. No. So it was really strong, right? And I had to kind of act on it pretty much immediately because this feeling of agitation was not going to go away. But of course, I had the skills to be able to sit and listen and hear that and not just go, oh, I feel really agitated. I had realized what I had done. I had gone against myself. So I had to pick up the phone and make a phone call and say, look, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to be able to do that. Don't go into justification. If you're having to defend a boundary, great ways to say no. No, I'd prefer not to. No, thank you. That doesn't work for me. Like I said, I prefer not to. That doesn't suit me. You don't have to go into contraction and end up telling somebody a pork pie to say no. The boundary is, that's not a good fit for me, but thank you for asking. Even if it's to, because again, what we're doing is we're going into somebody else's reality. We're going into you're making assumptions about how the other people feel. If I say no, they're going to be devastated. You don't know that. You're making an assumption. If I say no, then it's going to make life difficult for them. You don't know that. They might find somebody else who did a better job than you did, right? Don't make assumptions about what other people are thinking and feeling. Bring it back to yourself. Have a few key phrases. So if somebody puts you on the spot, you can actually say, let me think about it. I'll come back to you, right? make the educated choice to have these things in place, so you can actually say, even if it's like, can I think about it and come back to you? And then you perhaps go and say, look, I'm sorry, it's not going to be a good fit for me, so perhaps you need to ask somebody else. But having the courage to do this, because if you just keep on going into yes and end up doing things, you only have so much energy every day. So how you spend it is up to you. If you're spending it in places that don't bring you joy and happiness, then that's on you. And that's really confronting, and it's really hard to look at. And like I said, women often realize that they're saying yes, yes, yes all the time to keep other people happy, or to avoid conflict, or to be in a circumstance where they're wanting to receive love for being a good person, and they end up so angry, it can often be really unconscious. And then eventually it will start bubbling up, right? And then there will be often like a volcano, which is often, for some people, it's a midlife crisis. For some people, it's like that aha moment. But if you understand what is happening, you can be so much more gentle with yourself during the process. Like even understanding and realizing, oh my goodness, I've said yes so many times. I haven't chosen my joy. I haven't chosen what's me. What am I going to do about that? Because often when they get angry, what do women do especially? They get angry with themselves. All right, we're going to beat somebody up. I'll beat myself up. So, and again, what does it take to avoid even having to do that internal conflict, and say, I have this realization, I've already put myself through enough hell, so I'm going to forgive myself, and I'm actually going to choose to do the work of developing a healthy boundary. I can start doing that by having these, these little sayings up my sleeve. So if somebody asks me to do something, I can check in with my body and see what my body says. If my body says, yippee, yes, let's do it. Or if it says, no, that doesn't feel good, I'm going to listen to my body and I'm going to respond accordingly. Okay, so that's number 2. So number 3 is to check your reality. Now, this is kind of a wider view. We've got check your ego, check your boundaries, check your reality. This is really the overview, which is, again, like I said, expanding your view out so you can see more of the bigger picture. And that is actually, this might be a really good time for me to turn Facebook off. Guys, if you want to listen to the rest, you can tune into the radio show, which is 96.9 every Thursday morning. Or you can go to, if you're on the Intuitive Life Academy page, you should scroll up and subscribe to the podcast through iTunes, and then you can hear the rest of it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I do have to be aware of the fact that my phone has only so much juice. So it's been great fun connecting with you on Facebook. And do come over and join the Facebook group for more information on how to develop your intuition and to solve some of those life's bigger challenges, right? So bye, folks. See you later. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so the last step, we've got check your ego, check your boundaries, and check your reality. Okay, so when we're talking about checking your reality, it's really about, like I said, taking that bigger picture. Like, what is really happening here? Like, if I was on a little cloud with an angel looking down on my situation, what is it that I'm learning? I just touched on this before, and this is really important. Like, when you're in the middle of conflict, you have to remember that life is always working for you. It's never against you. But you have to realize some of life's most amazing gifts come in really crappy wrapping paper. So if you're experiencing some kind of conflict in your life at the moment, realize that there is a gift in it, but you have to look for it. You have to align your mind with the mind of the universe. The universe is always expanding, it's always growing, it's always creative. So when you start working with spirit, what you can do is you can shift your reality really quickly by even asking yourself questions like that, doing the work of developing your intuition to be able to go, wow, how is this situation possibly a gift for me? What would it take for my intuition to show me how this situation is gifting for me? And also too, this is the secret of gratitude, isn't it? To be able to go, no matter what is happening, there is some benefit. Because that's how life works. The universe is always for you. It's never working against you. So to be able to see it from that perspective is going to help you move out of the conflict more quickly, and that it's all engineered in your favour. Now, before, when I was talking about boundaries, I was talking about the interface between your own reality and other people's. Now, basically, this is your perception of reality, and this is hugely important because this is the one thing that you do have control over, that you can be introspective and actually go, what is my view of reality? Now, that's going to be made up of all the past experiences you've had. Now, depending on how esoteric you are and what you believe in, some of that is going to be made up of cellular memory that has come from other lifetimes. So you may have been born into a family in a particular country, in a particular culture, and then you're exposed to that family in terms of what they believe, what cultural customs they do, how they do things, what they believe about money, about relationships, about religion, about sex, about culture. You're exposed to that. So you're being imprinted from the moment that you are born in terms of who you are. And often what happens for my clients in particular is they get to a certain point where they realize that there's more to life. And then they start seeking for that, and often they'll go through the process of having a spiritual awakening. And a spiritual awakening can create a lot of dissonance, right? A lot of cognitive dissonance, which is, I feel like I'm losing my mind, or my reality is shifting in such a way that I feel that this is beyond my comprehension. You know, going through a spiritual awakening can be incredibly challenging. So if you're in that space at the moment, and often, right, it will show up in the place of conflict, because what's happening is it's like two tectonic plates, right, pushing up against each other. It's like there's part of you that's going, enough already, like there must be more to life than this. Like that's often what I said to myself. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm getting up, I'm going to work, like there has to be more to life than this. You know, and your intuition is also in the background going, woohoo, you know, your intuition being your connection to source energy. And then what happens is, if you are open to it, if you have enough courage, and don't get me wrong, like often a spiritual awakening can come with a lot of resistance, right? We have a lot of resistance in regards to going, oh, you know, it's easier just to say yes and be angry than it is to say no. And then, because then I might feel selfish. Okay, let's just clear that off the board. Because, you know, it's your choice. Do you want to be the person who contracts their energy by going against themselves, or do you want to be the person who has a clear channel because they've actually said, no, that doesn't work for me, and they're respecting themselves by following through on what it is that they want? So when it comes to checking your reality, realize that the perceiver, your reality is your perception. What you perceive is within your control. And where you focus your attention is what you will create. This is why it's so important to get integrated on so many levels, right? To learn what it takes to recognize your own ego. Like I had a conversation with a couple of people about this yesterday, about checking your ego, because your ego is tricky. Your ego is going to, anywhere there's resistance, there's your ego. So anywhere you're experiencing resistance in your life, anywhere you're going into I'm right and they're wrong, that is resistance. That is your ego. And this can be a hard concept to kind of absorb, but on the highest levels, spiritually speaking, there is no right or wrong. Why? Because the universe doesn't judge. We do that to ourselves. As humans, we go, because we're experiencing duality, we have a physical form. So we are separate from each other in the respect that we have a body. This is my body, that's your body. So we're, you know, it's a very sophisticated system, life. And we want to learn how to gather the tools to be able to navigate our way through it in the best possible way. And, you know, we want to learn what it is to do this journey of self-discovery from a place of compassion and gentleness, rather than bullying ourselves into behaving a particular way. We want to ask ourselves from a place of awareness, is this serving me? Or if it isn't. And this is often where people block their intuition, because your intuition often tells you things that you don't want to hear, right? You know, and I've definitely experienced that myself. Even recently, when, you know, I knew intuitively that my dad was dying, but I didn't want to believe it in my rational mind, And it wasn't even like it was a conflict. It was just there was so much dissonance, I couldn't even integrate it. But again, that is what played out. My intuition told me very clearly on a number of occasions that was occurring, but I didn't want to believe it. So I get it if you're in a circumstance where your intuition's saying, hey, this situation's not for you, or this isn't serving you, or you're going against yourself. The thing about intuition, right, never leaves you. It's your connection to source energy. It's always there waiting for you to engage, and you have to be the one to initiate it. Your intuition will not ever force itself on you. It will prompt you. It will nudge you. It will whisper in your ear. It will reverberate through your body. You'll know, right, that gut feeling like, oh, I already knew that. Right? Like if you're in a relationship that's not serving you, you already know it in your body on some level. And often too, right, we take it into the rational mind. And if we don't know how to feel our feelings, we can take the energy into our rational mind and we can be like, I can think my way out of my feelings. It doesn't work like that. Right, we need to develop the courage, cultivate the courage to learn how to access our intuition and learn how to be present to information that maybe our ego doesn't like, but our soul is okay with because our soul can see the bigger picture. Right, like if you're receiving information, for example, it often shows up, for example, when, you're in a relationship that's not serving you. And you can feel it, and maybe you've looked at it from lots of different perspectives, and your intuition is saying, it's time to go, it's time to make some action, but you're ignoring it. I did that when my job was just disestablished. When I was in banking, I was in my ego big time. I was like full of resistance. I was in blame. I was in judgment. I was like, they're so wrong. I can't believe they're doing this to me. And all the while, kind of my soul was just like, I'm just going to wait until it drops in and you get the memo that this is actually for your benefit. So what does it take to see any situation that's actually causing you conflict as your benefit? You don't want to go into, bypassing. You're at the intensity of your emotions. You want to learn how to feel your emotions. That's a whole different thing. I could talk about that for a whole hour and more, right? What it takes to identify, be present to, and feel your emotions. That is a skill set that not that many people cultivate. Again, if you do, it will set you free, because what will happen is when an emotion comes up, you'll know what it is to respect it, to honor it, and what to do with it. And this is the thing as well, like sometimes we need to figure out where the emotion's coming from, because is it coming from a true emotion, like this is how I really feel, or is that emotion being cultivated from a thought process which has come from our ego? That's where we need to learn the difference. I've had this thought process, because if you're sitting there going into blame and judgment, that's going to create contraction in your body. You're not going to feel good. You're going to feel resistant, you're going to feel angry, probably going to feel it mostly in your head space, because that's where the thought is being generated. Your body doesn't literally generate kind of hate feelings. Your heart doesn't do that naturally. Your head does. So even checking to see if your head and your heart are connected. So checking your reality means, how can I look at this from a spiritual perspective? Because if I'm looking at it from the spiritual perspective, that is so much more expanded than my ego. Your spiritual perspective is really like going to the universe and saying, can you help me with this, please? Whereas if you're operating from your ego, it's like going to your dog and saying, can you please help me with this situation? Your dog doesn't know how to do that, right? Your dog's just going to sit there and wag its tail and smile at you, but it's not going to be able to help you resolve the conflict. That's the best description I've ever heard. It's from Sonia Choquette, and she said, and she says, you need to treat your ego like a dog, like a puppy or like an animal, like a pet. But really on the highest level, your ego is actually an illusion. But when we're dealing with a human existence, we want to learn how to engage with it before we can get to that higher level of understanding that your ego is an illusion. So you don't want to pay it any attention at all, right? You just want to move more and more and more into spirit. You want to choose that, show up to that, be with that, be present to that. So folks, if you are, I'd love to hear how this information has landed with you. It's kind of interesting to me. It feels like it's definitely an on-point topic. I'm more than happy to talk about it more, but do let me know, right? If you found this information useful, you can get hold of me by emailing me at rebecca.davison@extra.co.nz, which is with an X for extra. And it's just Rebecca, REBECCA.DAVISON at extra with an x.co.nz, so .co.nz. You can go to my website, which is rebeccadavison.life, and check out there. You can also join the Facebook group. I post in the Facebook group every day. A wee while ago, we did a self-worth challenge where I came and did 5 videos every day. Being in that space, too, of being willing to show up. I ask questions every day in the group. Sometimes it's fun and playful. Other times it's a little deeper to help you gain self-awareness. And of course, this weekend, crowdcast.io/e/transcending-people. If you need to do some work on your boundaries, if you know that your boundaries are being trampled, if you know that you're not good at saying no, if you feel guilty when you choose to spend time on yourself, please come and do the energy clearing. What it's all about is going into the subconscious and going to those root causes, the root wounding in regards to where you had your boundaries trampled in the past and where it's all just kind of sitting there unconsciously because you haven't ever looked at it before, right? So it's about going deeper into the deeper parts of you. And I know a lot of people are like, ooh, ooh, ooh. They often hear that and they kind of like, oh, I'd like to, but I'm scared. What does it take to transcend that fear and jump in and try it anyway? Because it can be so liberating to know that your soul is there waiting to support you, wanting to help you to step into a greater life, more freedom, more pleasure, more abundance. So to have the courage to go jump in. But again, that's only a choice that you can make. So maybe just asking the soul part of yourself, if I do this, is it going to help me to expand in my awareness? If I do this, am I going to feel lighter and more uplifted in my body and my energy field? Where are my boundaries at the moment? Do I need some support and help to figure out how to do that? So it's a very energetic process. We're working through your energy field. So even if you showed up with an open mind and had no clues what was going to happen, that's kind of the best energy to be in a way, because then you can allow yourself to be open and go deep, do the work, clear the old hurt and pain, recognize that there's probably some anger there that hasn't been processed, and allow yourself to be free and clear of that energy, because it will be pulling on your energy and your vibration whether you're aware of it or not. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with before and they have often been in the energy of, I just thought this was the way life was. No, you're actually here to be happy and to have fun and to have pleasure and enjoyment and freedom and happiness. That is really, when you're truly enlightened, that is available to you. But it's your choice as to whether you step in and do that. So I do hope you join me. Just come and join the Facebook group. You can also find a link for it's 9:30 this Sunday. And it's for an hour and a half. So what would it take to do that and to get free and clear? Alrighty, folks. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this session today. I've definitely enjoyed delivering it to you. Just as a small recap, we talked about, number 1, checking your ego when it comes to being in conflict. We talked a little bit about chronic, over a longer period of time, and acute conflict, which is obviously when you're in the midst of an argument. Some of those tips, if you are in an argument, remember your breathing. Endeavour to keep your tone as neutral as possible. Stay out of blame and judgment. Ask for what it is that you need. Like if somebody's really going off at you, just asking for time. And the next evolution of that is to check your boundaries. How strong are my boundaries? Is this person bullying me? If they are, what do I need to do in terms of learning what it takes to have a really good boundary so they're not feeling that within me, so therefore picking on me, projecting on me, dumping their stuff on me. And also too, learning about energetics so you're not picking it up. especially if this is with people that we love, we can often pick up their energy. If they're unhappy and we kind of think that we're okay, we can often pick up energy for people. Okay, and the third step, of course, was to check your reality and to, call on the power and the wisdom of the universe to support you and help you in terms of overcoming conflict, especially if you have somebody in your life that drives you crazy. That person is always a reflection of you on some level, especially if you're getting involved in it. Right? If you are enmeshed in the situation, if you don't have the ability to let it kind of bounce off, there is definitely something within yourself that needs to be looked at and for the energy to be released and transcended. And when it is, you're free and clear. Alrighty, folks, so it's always a privilege and a pleasure to come to you on the Find Your Bliss show. Like I said again, you can always check out the podcast on iTunes by searching for Find Your Bliss. You'll see a picture of me there with longer hair. Subscribe to it, and you can always make sure that you get the replay. All right, folks, I hope you have a magical day. I'll look forward to connecting with you guys again soon. Bye for now. Bye.